it just seemed like you were a lot happier in the early startup phase when you weren't making any money, So once, and obviously you can't equate making money with happiness.
Right.
But I always thought, hey, once this thing started taking off and we were finding success, things should go well, right?
Right.
As far as
Right.
our
Really.
relationship goes. But I was very surprised when one day you showed up and said, "Hey, I don't know if I can keep going like this."
We're bad business friends.
Hi, welcome to the Bad Business Friends YouTube channel. I'm Scott Shin, the founder of Revival Jewelry, here with Jacob Pazos, founder of Jacob Mark Jewelers. Most entrepreneurship podcasts and YouTube channels want to share their success stories. We're here to share our failures, stories of failures with you for your benefit, or at the very least, get a laugh out of our stories, right? Get a kick out of our folly. So, Jacob, we're still early on in this. This is only our second episode, but I wanted to dive right into Revival Jewelry, right? Because we're co-founders of Revival Jewelry, and it's first few years, right? What
Mhm.
can you recall what it was like? How did we already kind of talked about like why we decided to go into business together, but what was it like in that first year for us? Was it, from what you remember, was it tough? Was it the most exciting time of your life?
It was definitely exciting. It was it was man, so unlike anything you've ever done before. You are in every sense of the way dependent on your own work and dependent on yourself. Um, it's really scary a lot of times, but it was exciting in the same breath, right? I think it was, if I'm revisiting, it was definitely a time where we had a lot of hope, potential. Those things were fueling the excitement, right?
We were going to take over
Um,
the world with Revival, right?
yeah, we were gonna take over the world. We were gonna take over the whole jewelry industry. Is what it felt like, right? Um, and and yeah, so we basically just a lot of R&D to begin, like from a practical standpoint of what we actually did. Felt like a lot of R&D at the time. It didn't feel like it. It just felt like, oh, this is what's necessary. But I think after a year and a half or so of R&D, it just felt like, okay, this has been going on for a while. Like, when are we at? The with the hope and the excitement and all that stuff started to fade a bit.
So
You know,
let's go back to the beginning, right? So
yeah.
once we decided we're going to start a business together, what was the first thing we did? From what I remember, and actually this goes into maybe things I would do differently. And I'll start with our first failure, I think, and you can share your thoughts on this. I think our first failure was spending too much, like you said, R&D is fine, but I guess as people say, you can fall into a paralysis of analysis. So we were maybe looking too much into that, but more than the R&D, I don't mind developing the best product possible. So I don't think you can overdo R&D really. For me, it was when we decided to go into business and incorporate. Um, we wanted to protect assets that we didn't even own. Remember, we said we need to file a patent, right, on a product we haven't even developed yet.
Yeah.
Um, we hired lawyers to create our articles of incorporation.
Yeah.
And I regret, honestly, you can do that all yourself without paying a lawyer. You can go to LegalZoom, and even the lawyers, they use boilerplate wording. Now, the lawyer we had, I was so upset. I remember we spent what $5,000 on our articles incorporation, and he didn't even get the name of our company right. He copied and pasted, and I remember it had the name of a different company when he sent us the first draft. I'm like, "Are you
Yeah.
kidding me?" Like, and he's, "Oops,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Let me just change that for you." And he probably hit select and find, and I mean,
Right.
so
Find and replace.
if I went back and did it again, I would probably just use LegalZoom. Secondly, the with the patent, honestly, we didn't. We did file a provisional, but we ended up not wanting to go forward with it because We wanted to keep our invention a trade secret, which works way better. And so we spent a lot of time and money on that. I would have preferred to use all that money on, spending it on toward putting a product out and anything that helps us make money, right? Sales and
Yeah.
marketing. But of course, hindsight's 2020, and we spent more money up front on legal fees than launching our business and making our product. In fact, I think a fraction of our cost was making the jewelry and actually selling it on a great platform, Shopify, we ended up using.
Yeah.
But anyway, so would you sort of agree, or what do you remember as being our biggest failures at the very outset of this?
I would definitely agree. I think I think it's definitely healthy to you're bringing up a point that I wish like I would have had with our company back then, which was I think you need people who can kind of bring you down from oh my gosh, I have the greatest thing that I'm about to bring to humanity, right? To like, hey,
Let's test it.
you need sales, right? I used to, you watch Shark Tank and things like this, right? And you've seen these businesses before where they're asking for some just extraordinary valuation. And then they get to the point where they're like, well, what are your sales? And they're like, oh, we have none yet, And I remember sitting there and being like, dude, these people are crazy, and most of the products and things, right?
Sure.
And even the ones that were good, you're looking at them and you're like, okay, yeah, I could kind of see it, but still that's like ridiculous. We were those people, we were the ones who are like, this is the greatest thing, and it felt like it truly, obviously we think differently now, but in the moment back then, we thought that we were going to just rock the jewelry industry. And because of that, we needed to protect these assets. I remember we had these discussions like people are going to want to take this. They're going to want to, do all these things. And the jewelry industry is like that. I understand like everything back then made sense. It just, it seemed like a good idea. Everything back then did. But
so then what would you have focused on?
Yeah, I wish I wish I could go travel back in time and smack myself around and be like, no, just start. And I agree. I think, and I try to tell people this who are starting businesses, focus on sales first. Focus on getting your product or service sold, and you are not. It's hard to get a lot of notoriety quick. Okay, it's hard to blow up overnight as a business. On social media, you've seen it happen, but businesses don't go viral, typically, right? Businesses take a long process. They're slow, persistent growth. And I think if I could have told myself anything back then, it would have been those things that, hey, just know that this is, you hear this all the time. You're not going to take a profit for 3 to 5 years. That was the last thing I wanted to hear. I was like, I wanted quick, like, let's get to it. Let's make money, and yeah, I think I was thinking that once we turn this thing on, we're going to be a $25 million company in a year, and so we got to protect our assets and get ready and, all these things. And it was like we're building a freaking cruise ship, and we're like, but we're only gonna, we've never driven a boat before, but we're all building this cruise ship, It's like, what were we doing, And I totally agree with you, though. Your mindset of work on getting sales and all those things instead, even if maybe even go as far as to even if it is a patentable product, maybe try to get sales first, because patents are not cheap. PCT patents are definitely not cheap.
That's an international.
It's something I definitely regret and would change.
So when we finally got past the paperwork and spending all the money on lawyers, we actually had a product. We decided to launch on we had our business model, which was, direct to consumer online, so e-commerce. Found the perfect platform for that. A lot of entrepreneurs are using Shopify. Of course, there's also Amazon, but we decided to launch direct to consumer. What do you remember the feeling you had after that first sale? Because you said you had these lofty expectations, 25 million right out the gate. Do you remember how much we made in our first month of trying to sell?
I still I remember the lady's name. I remember where I was. I remember everything. It was the best feeling of all time. I thought it was a random person. I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh my gosh, someone somehow found us!" And we saw. Then I find out it was my like a family member's friend, you know. But
You know,
but
you have to
still, it
start
was
somewhere.
like okay, yeah, it was like kind of sobering. Still, it's like okay, yeah, we're gonna have to start slow, and from
But I
people
think
we
we
know.
did shortly after that get validation because only,
Yeah,
within a day or two, when we started marketing this online, we started getting orders ourselves, not
yeah,
through friends, but just random people buying our stuff and liking what we had to offer, right? Okay, I looked this up, and so we did do about 1,200 in sales for the very first month. Not, that's not going to cause us to jump on this full time and quit our jobs. But honestly, when I look back, that like you said, that first month was very exciting. We were fulfilling single orders and like, you know, hand fulfilling and hand delivering, like, well, we weren't hand delivering, but taking it to dropping it off at the UPS or drop site, just for one order, right? And
yeah.
those were exciting times. And then actually after the first month, I think it started snowballing. We
Mhm.
quickly blew up. So the truth is, I think there is a tipping point where you will find acceleration, you will find huge growth. And I, I don't want to say we went viral, but it did pick up steam on Facebook for us.
Yeah.
So we quickly went from gosh, we I mean within months we hit our first, like, went from 1,000 a month to, I think our best month within 6 months might have been 100K, something like that. And so we moved fairly
Yeah,
quickly.
we did.
Truth is, like you said, most businesses kind of have to grind it out. You don't just suddenly go viral overnight. I think over time, if you continue to put into work and market yourself, you may actually catch a break. And
Yeah.
you never know. Like, we had random influencers just pick up our product, and we get sudden orders that we didn't expect. But
Yeah.
I think our first video we put out did go sort of viral because it got like 1 million views overnight, and so that helped us kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was exciting. At what point was it that we decided? I know maybe I jumped all in a little bit before you, but when did we decide, hey, we're gonna do this full time? Do you remember? How much in sales did we
Well,
have to? What was
yeah,
it?
I think. Well, okay, it's kind of a semi-difficult question because for anyone who may be listening, we talked about the R&D phase and all of those things, right? And then we talked about how our first month was $1,200. I think it's important to note that we wasted or spent, if you will, like a year to a year and a half in that R&D phase, right? So it was a lot of we knew our product, we knew all these things, and I don't like just saying R&D. I know it was other things that we spent time and money on, but during that year and a half, uh, I was I was trying to pick up side jobs or whatever I could just to make ends meet, kind of thing, and live. But it was definitely my full time like focus. It was all about revival. It was all about if we're gonna make this thing work. Um, if I can go on this is just kind of a maybe a tangent, but more so speaking to somebody who would be
Mhm.
in those positions like us, like we were. I think I just want to touch on when you said earlier the paralysis of analysis. Okay. Um, Failure, I think, often keeps us from even starting. Okay. And I don't know if this was, I'm curious to see
Yeah,
if this was your mindset. Because this was my mindset, and I don't know if anybody could relate to this. But I remember looking back on this years later and going, man, I really sabotaged, at least on my end, like extended the finish line to getting to launch, you know, and it was from this intense fear of failure, and and also a little bit of which is weird is a fear of success too. I think a lot of times jumping into a business is like jumping off of a diving board, right? It's scary. It's kind of, if it's your first time, it's a lot of unknowns. It's a lot of what ifs, all those things, right? And I think, at least for myself, when we were starting Revival in that what I call the R&D phase, that year and a half, I was kind of climbing up the proverbial ladder to the diving board to jump in, but I kept extending it, you know? And
I kind of remember. I kind of remember that
yeah.
that you were a little tentative.
And it would be little, like I wasn't aware I was doing it. That's the thing. I had zero awareness I was doing it, but I think subliminally it was from fear of failure and success. Fear of failure is obvious. It's what if this goes wrong and all the problems, but fear of success, I think a lot of entrepreneurs won't admit that there's some fears of success too. I mean, it's more responsibility on you. The potential is actualized now. It's not all potential anymore.
So you're like, what if this thing takes off? I have to do all this work. Is that what you're saying?
I feel like more so, and maybe it's linked to fear of failure. It's the weight of failure with success becomes heavier, right? The weight becomes heavier.
Like, how do you outdo yourself?
Right. Yeah. You have more that you can lose, you know, whereas me, I had to move back in with my parents to start this. I had to, you know, live really minimalistically to be able to, you know, to do this and work on this thing. And that was not much I could lose, you know. Whereas it's like you think, oh my gosh, I could lose so much time. I could lose so much of my life. I could lose, and then when you starts growing, you're like in this awkward phase of like, hey, we're making $5,000 a month in revenue, but it's not enough to like pay me and all these, like, how long am I gonna be stuck here, you know? And
Well,
it's
like we had already burned a whole year, and we didn't have a website. Do you remember me making a call to you while you were in New Orleans one day? And he said, "Hey, it's been a year since we had this idea. We
yeah.
filed all the paperwork. We did
Mhm.
this and that. You know, R&D. We have a product finally, but we spent a whole year talking about what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
Let's just build a website right now." And that's when I had found out about Shopify. I said, "Look, I can build a website within a day. Let's give it a shot. Let's put it out there." Because I think our fear was that we didn't have a good enough product. We only had one product at the time. It was the Halo, right? Like, is this good enough to start putting out there? Part of it was you know, the fear for me was, you know, gosh, like this is kind of embarrassing. We have one product, and
Yeah.
look at how do you build a website around one product?
Yeah.
But we did, and I think we were still on that one product that first month, and I think eventually it took us a few
Yeah.
months to put out our signature line of 4 pieces. I mean, now we have, I think, our whole library catalog consists of 65 unique products, and growing. But yeah, we had 4 in the first year, and you know, we
Right.
blew that up. So I definitely didn't regret finally putting it out there, but I do regret taking so much time and dragging our feet, right? That first year and a half, you said?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was about a year and a half. Yeah, and I agree with that. I think the fears will be different for everybody. Like, yeah, I saw fears even in my dad, who was involved with the business and things, and it's just I think I mean, maybe I'm generalizing, but I do think it just comes back to this fear of failure, right? At the end of the day, it's like, yeah, what if I put all this time and it doesn't work, right? And like you said, like this fear of you're putting out one product and what if it doesn't sell, and it's embarrassing, you know? And it's kind of interesting. It's just such a it's interesting how our minds work, but yeah, I felt like I was just extending that ladder, and I remember the call that you gave, and you were like, hey, like you said, I remember exactly where I was too, and I get on the phone and you're like, hey, it's been a year. We need to do something, basically. Like, like we have nothing to show for it. It's been a year. And that's when I was like, you know what? I've had this fear of failure this whole time. And it, it's like, okay, am I gonna stay like scared of failing, or am I more scared of like wasting my life avoiding failure, right? And I was finally like, yeah, I remember at the end of the call, we're like, let's do it. Let's just go for it. And yeah, I think that's a big decision people have to make is like, are you scared of failing? And if so, I mean, what are you more scared of? Like wasting your time and your life, or failing in front of people, right? And at some point, you gotta get on the diving board, stop extending that ladder, and just jump, and just go for it.
So we finally made the jump, right? And we had put that product out. Like we said, we fulfilled our first few orders, and then we start getting more orders, and then month over month we keep kind of doubling ourselves. And now, what's next? We can't just keep fulfilling these orders from like our garage, right? When were you were how many months did it take for you to finally well, you were fulfilling the orders from New Orleans, right? If I'm not mistaken. For the
Yeah,
first
yeah,
month?
literally my bedroom. Literally, I converted my bedroom to an office space. And yeah, we moved all the equipment into my bedroom, and yeah, I would wake up, roll out of bed, get dressed, and literally sit on the desk chair. And
How long was it before we decided we need to actually have a real workspace in
I think
then when we get our first office in California?
so. We started that phone call you gave was back in like September-ish, around this time of year, September, because we launched. I think we
Was
got
that
a first
2019? September or
20,
2018?
20
Must have been
no,
2018.
what year was it? It had to
I
be
think that
like
was 2018 because it's 2022
2018,
now.
right?
Yeah.
2018, yeah. It had to be August or September at the latest, because we launched, we got the website up. We had one product, and then you remember we ran we ran like a contest in October to try to get somebody, get the stuff get moving. So that's September 2018. The next
That's
year,
when we launched the website. Yeah.
2019 in June was what it was. Picked up everything and I moved out there again.
Within a
And
year. Okay.
so it was, yeah, it
Because
was a
that's when
while.
the ball was rolling and we were actually finding a little bit of
Yeah,
success.
it was still risky. I don't think the revenue, I mean, profits weren't great, but revenue was still not that crazy. And we picked up and moved it all out there. But it still kept growing from that point though.
Well, we did have a healthy amount of revenue in the first full year that we were in business.
Yes, yeah.
But we had to throw all that back into building the business. It's not like, I mean, I think we did give ourselves some, right? Just
Yeah.
enough to survive. But that first year, and I know the number we did. I think, the first month we only did 1,200, but by the end of the year we had reached 279 in sales, which 279K it of that. I think if we had just closed the business down then, like at least half of that would have just been pure profit and we could have just shut our doors. But we threw all of that back into new inventory, developing more products, even hiring people, because we wanted to expand this, right? But anyway, before we get to that part of revival, so you finally move out to California. We decided we're going to headquarter our business here in California. We already had our system of production fulfillment in place. We already had our sales channels set up. Which was mostly Facebook at the time, right? We were 100% reliant on Facebook.
Yep.
Talk about that first year you moved out here, because I know it wasn't easy for you. I know we encountered some challenges in our relationship, just as friends, but also in the business. But what did our relationship and did your feelings about revival change? And if so, how, at what point did that happen?
Yeah,
Once
I
you moved
think
out, went all in.
yeah, I think I remember picking up moving out, like I said, June that year, and it was a lot of work, and so I don't think I was paying much attention to um, how our relationship was. I remember it was very different. It felt like it was more a transactional work. We're coworkers now instead of friends, like when I left, whatever it was, a couple years prior. Um, and I remember that, but I was like, uh, it's fine. Like we're growing this thing, and
Yeah,
I found a lot of enjoyment in the growth, and I thought it was really great. And so at first, I was kind of just so focused on that that's just what I did. Um, then I think things started going more south, if you will, with us, like when the pressure was added that Christmas. It was a lot going on. We had a lot of orders, which is really exciting, but the pressure of fulfilling them. I think we had like supply chain constraints, basically, with the invention. We had manufacturer errors on top of all of that. It was
yeah,
just
yeah.
a lot going on, right? And so the first year being out there was a lot of excitement, but also like a lot of pressure.
Sure.
And it didn't feel. I think like that's when the levels were like excitement, and everything went down, and then it was
Yeah.
replaced with more so
Well,
anxiety, and it kind of lost its fun towards the end of that
sure.
year.
Well, maybe it started turning into a grind because we had to get ourselves into a routine in order to fulfill orders on time, right? I think,
Mhm.
you know, you were thriving in the planning phase of everything, right? Coming up with the ideas, but when you actually had to execute and it turned into like a repetitive thing every day where we had to come in, fulfill and pack orders, it started to become a grind. I don't, I don't know at what point you started to kind of drift away. I felt like you had checked out at a certain point because you were more excited about in the early days when we were making no money, right? And then we finally got to a point where we didn't have enough product to fulfill the demand, right? Um,
Yeah,
Things started to
yeah.
change.
I think I don't want to say I checked out in terms of like I didn't care about the business, because even to this day I still love it. It was more so I think our strain, the pressure of the business, which it probably happens with everyone who goes into business with anyone really, let alone friends or family. The pressure will weigh on your relationship, and the question is that pressure going to snap it and break it, or are you guys going to be able to hold it all? And I think when that Christmas came by, that first Christmas, what's funny is I actually didn't have a problem with the fulfillment stuff. I enjoyed it. I felt like if you remember when I first moved here, I was the first one like doing the fulfillment. I would
Yeah,
do it at night every day. I'd stay late, and I don't know why I enjoyed it. Maybe because I like being by myself. But it was 20 orders, not 150 or
yeah,
whatever. Yeah, so I actually didn't mind the fulfillment stuff. It was, I think, just like I said, the pressure of now we have this pressure of we have to fill all these orders every day. We have to do all this work, but our relationship is strained. So um, instead of an environment where it's like, hey, we're all going to get together and really accomplish all these things, it was more so like, how it is when like parents get upset at each other because the kids
yeah.
are giving them pressure. And it's like they just snap at each other. That's how it kind of felt with us sometimes. I
Yeah,
don't know why.
so it seemed, from what I can recall, it just seemed like you were a lot happier in the early startup phase when we weren't making any money. So once, and obviously you can't equate, making money with happiness.
Right.
But I always thought, hey, once this thing started taking off and we were finding success, things should go well, right?
Right.
As far
Right.
as our
Really.
relationship goes. But I was very surprised when one day you showed up and said, "Hey, I don't know if I can keep going like this." And was that? I think you were still with us for a year, and you decided to.
Yeah.
I think after COVID started, right? The pandemic hit, and you went back home. The first time you went back home for an extended stay during COVID, we talked on the phone, and you said, seriously considering not coming back. What, just if you don't mind, open up a little, share some of your thoughts at that time, what you were processing to, reach that place where
Yeah.
you decided you weren't going to come back.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We've talked on and off about this stuff before, but I think now since we've started from the beginning, I could see more how it wasn't. And it's usually never like this, but it's like it's a snowball thing, effect. Kind of, it just keeps growing and growing. And I think when that first Christmas happened, and there's so much pressure, I think that's when subliminally in the back of my mind, I noticed like our relationship's different. It's not like we're friends anymore. It's like we're coworkers, right? And I think we had a sit down like early January about that. And we were like, okay, well, we're just going to keep on going. And I don't think we ever really like addressed it or anything. So it kind of was like that tone, like to end one year and start another, continued. And it became like you and I were like this to here now, and I don't think I realized it as much at the time. Like I remember just if moments where I felt you were like a jerk or something, I was just like, oh, he's being a jerk today, and vice versa, right? Like, and I realized when it's kind of leading up to, I think, the second Christmas, I remember dreading and having a lot of anxiety of like, is it going to be just like last year, and I think, yeah, we went through the Christmas season. It was not fun. It wasn't exciting anymore. It was like a very lackluster. And I think you and I would get into it more, and the heart was gone from it, like from my side, and it was just like, I felt like I didn't want to show up there anymore, and I think it's also a thing of, I think at the end of the day, I felt unvalued, I remember when I was fulfilling orders by myself, like, when we first launched kind of thing, when we went through that first Christmas, it wasn't like, hey, good job. It was like, get this done. Why is it not getting done quicker? Those kind of convos we would have. And it was like, it would be a knock to my value, right? And then like, as we wanted to expand jewelry lines, it was like, I felt like I wasn't giving ideas that were sticking and things. And again, felt like, man, am I being valued in my opinions at all? And then carry that over to the next Christmas. And it's like, okay, now we're going through the same thing as last year. And I think it was like, that was my breaking point. I was like, I feel like my value is down here. And I remember being back home. I may have texted you this or emailed you this or something, but I said, if I have no value to this company, why would you guys want me to come back? And at the moment, because that's how I felt in the moment,
Mhm.
and I was like, I feel like I remember even questioning. I'm like, am I the reason Revivals hasn't done well, or or whatever it was? I remember like just thinking these crazy thoughts of like, maybe I'm the one holding them back, maybe.
But
And so,
I'm curious how you'd have that thought, because I think around the time you left, that was sort of like the peak of where we were, right, in terms of sales and
yeah,
growth.
it was weird because like I didn't check the sales as much. I wasn't really involved with I was so involved, I felt like more with the day-to-day
Sure.
with in terms of fulfillment and things. I wasn't concerned with what were we making that month, or it wasn't affecting my paycheck either way. I was like, I'm here to do my job.
Well, and we were
you know
finally making a sustainable living.
yeah,
You even got an apartment in California, usually
yeah,
not cheap. And I think like that's why to me it was all a surprise. But I guess those weren't the things I was thinking of at the time. Weren't, and then I'm sorry if you didn't feel valued at the time. I didn't at the time. I didn't realize you had those thoughts. I was just thinking, why aren't you happy? But I think I failed to understand that. I mean, I was more focused on we need to operate this company well, and I think because we were so busy, also it was hard to take time to think long term about our business, right?
Yeah.
And so we weren't in, doing the things that you enjoy doing, like brainstorming and thinking out strategy for the next quarter. We were just trying to successfully finish out, that
Yeah.
holiday season. And
Yeah.
so, and I'm sorry, I guess I was difficult to be around and not very considerate of those things at the time. And
Yeah.
I see how you could see it that way. But yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it all came as a surprise because I had no idea until you shared those things and how difficult I was being, at least. And so it's good to look back on those things. And I think that helped me just, even though you're a co-founder and maybe I would treat a co-founder differently, just to think twice before, about the words I say to our employees and how I treat them as well. So thanks for letting me know.
And I mean, to be honest, and we've talked about this like off camera before, because I mean, obviously we didn't leave on great terms, and we had kind of taken a break from each other, so to speak. And but no, I think it was, when you add pressure onto things, it's just like I said, it's either going to break it or you're going to have to become stronger to hold it all, right? And I think there were certain things on, I don't want it to sound like it's all one-sided where Scott was horrible or and then that's it or something. I know there were things that I wasn't in a position where I was doing things well. I know there was a lot of frustration of, we've talked about this before, where hey, Jacob, you have to design this jewelry, but also keep in contact with our manufacturers and make sure things are done on time, whatever. And if packages will come late or whatever, and I felt like I can't help that. I'm trying my best. I'm doing these things. It would frustrate you, and then you, of course, when someone's frustrated, you're kind of giving me back that frustration. Then that frustrates me because I'm like, why is he upset at me?
Yeah.
And it's like this cyclical thing. And so, yeah, it was really rough. It was from both sides. It was, I was not doing things how the most effectively in your eyes and things. And I thought I was, and then we're like, butting heads even more. And so, yeah, so it's a lot of friends going to become co-founders is definitely, we learned a lot, I'd say.
We can talk more about that, I guess. Right now we're running out of time on this one, so I'm just gonna wrap it up, and we'll delve more into why, really deeply into what our failures were and what we could do different, or what we wish we had done differently. We're still friends today somehow, after all that, but and we're doing this together. So even for the sake of this YouTube channel, how can we maintain, our friendship? And we still have a level of respect for each other, considering that we're doing this together, right? And I thank you for, being humble enough to do this and share all these things. And I know it's not easy, but anyway, that's going to be it for this particular segment. So if anyone's out there watching this, like and subscribe, and join us for the next one, where we're talking about should friends go into business together.